Welcome again, class. Thank you for joining me. Today is our third day of 8.6, and we are going to wrap this up. So, we're going to be doing the same thing we have in the past 2 days, factoring these trinomials, but this time we're going to consider factoring out a common monomial first. Now, for this lesson quiz, we're not going to do this in the video because I want to get to the bulk of the new material. So, hold that thought on those. We will do those together in class. My focus is I want to begin down here with our little helpful hint. So, when you need to factor, always see if there is a monomial that can be factored out first, or GCF that can be factored out first. Now, some common ones that are really easy to see. If every term is even, just take that 2 right out, pull it out front, because it'll save you the hassle of extra numbers when you're trying to factor. Same thing, if they all have an x, you can take out that x, and again, save yourself a lot of hassle. So, let's take a look at that first example there. What can you take out of 3x cubed plus 18x squared plus 24x? Well, looking at the numbers, all of those numbers look like they're divisible by 3. So I'm going to say that I'm going to pull a 3 out. And then notice, every one of them has an x as well. So I'm actually going to pull an x out because if the smallest exponent of x is an x to the 1, I'm going to pull that right out front. So this time, we're going to begin this process by factoring out that 3x first, pulling out that greatest common factor. So now, looking at that 3x cubed, and I'm pulling out a 3x. Well, 3 divided by 3 gives me 1. X cubed, and then pulling out an x to the first, that's going to leave me with x squared. Focusing on the middle one now. 18, and I'm dividing out a 3, leaves me with 6. X squared, so 2, when I'm taking one of those away, it's going to leave me an x to the first. Finally, the last term, 24x to the first. 24 divided by 3 leaves me 8, x to the first, and I'm taking out that only x, so that means it is done. And then just to clean it up a little bit so there's not all those ones everywhere, we are talking about this. Now, the cool thing is when we get to that point, now that we've factored out that 3x, now this is completely factorable. That's something that'll be much easier for us to factor now. Now, if you notice, factoring that quadratic, that is what we've been doing these past sections, all right? So we have that 3x out front still, but now I'm going to take a look at that, and that's where my 2 parentheses are going to come from. Notice this first example is really nice because notice the x squared term is by itself. There's no number there. So that's going back to those very, very basics that we began with. That means we're just getting an x and an x there. That 8, well, that 8 is going to break down into 1 and 8, 2 and 4. And remember, with this really, really basic case, all we need those numbers to do is add to the 6. So we know right away what we're looking for is the 2 and the 4. So don't forget, we've been doing all these complicated problems. Don't forget, we can go back to the basics and just get x plus 2, x plus 4. But don't forget, you have to have that 3x out front. What you pulled out at the very beginning must be part of that final problem, all right? So these are the types of things we are going to be talking about today. So let's take a look at that top one. What is the factored form of 18x squared minus 33x plus 12? All right, well, there is not an x in every term, so I don't have to worry about pulling out x. But notice the 18, 33, and 12. Notice the number does pull out of there. Now, it's not 2 because the 33 is odd. So the next one is to try to see if 3 pulls out, which It does. So we pull a 3 out. That's going to leave us with 6x squared, negative 11x, and 4. So, and again, it's to our benefit to pull that out first because now there's going to be less options as we're trying to figure out how to break this part down. So now that I have that, I'm just going to focus on that last piece in the parenthesis. So I'm going to break this down into 6 and 1, 3 and 2, break that down to 1 and 4, 2 and 2, and let's see what's happening now. Again, little shortcut for you I mentioned in the last video. We need this to become negative 11. Now, that's not going to be possible with two even factors, all right? So right off the bat, I'm going to rule out that 2 and 2. To get an odd number in the middle, I know I can't have two even factors. So that's not going to end up working. Next thing that I notice, I have I need it to multiply to be positive, add to be negative. So I know I'm looking at two negative numbers here. So next, I have my two structures. We're going to be looking at 6x and x, or 3x and 2x. All right? So let's begin this process. I'm going to start with 6x and x. And I'm going to try the negative 1 and the negative 4. And I'm going to see what happens. 6 and negative 4 make negative 24. Negative 1 and x, that is going to make a negative 1. That adds to negative 25, not quite what we are looking for. So I'm going to switch it up. I'm going to switch the negative 1 and the negative 4. That's going to give us negative 6. That's going to give us negative 4. And that's giving us negative 10, not negative 11. So we've exhausted that first structure. Okay, that's not what we're going for. So let's try the 3x and the 2x now. So, oh, I'm sorry. I usually switch colors for you guys. So we're going to plop in the negative 1 and the negative 4. That connects to negative 12. That connects to negative 2. Well, that's negative 14. Still not the negative 11 we're shooting for. So let's reverse those and see what happens. Negative 4, negative 1. Well, there's negative 3. I'm sorry. There's negative 8. Well, that adds to the negative 11 that we're looking for. So that turns out to be our solution. Now, the one thing we can't forget before we wrap up this problem, that original 3 that was out front still has to be part of our answer. So make sure you remember to put that 3 in there. And then that is going to be our final solution to this one. So again, notice, is very, very similar to what we were doing the past 5 days now, just an additional step of pulling stuff out. So next example, what is the factor form of 8x squared minus 36x minus 20? Now for this one, the x is not in every term, so we can't pull that out. But we can pull out a number because you notice all of them are even. So, however, we need to look and see, can we pull out more than just a 2? Because something I want you to notice, all those numbers are also divisible by 4. So make sure when you're doing this process, make sure you're pulling out as much as absolutely possible. So when I pull out a 4, that's going to give me a 2x squared, a negative 9x, and a negative 5. And now this is where I'm going to have to start breaking this down. So 2 can only break down into 2 and 1. 5 can only break down into 1 and 5. Now, I want you to be aware though, again, that is a negative 5. So when I set up this structure, the 2x and the x, when I set up that basic structure, I want you to remember that now, as I'm putting in 1 and 5, I need to be cognizant of the fact I know that one of these stretches is going to be negative. So I need to consider, well, if I make one of those negative, we're talking about plus or minus 9. 10 minus 1 is 9. 1 minus 10 is negative 9. Now I want you to notice what we're shooting is for the negative 9. So that means I know I'm going to make that one negative because that is how I'm going to add to give me negative 9. So that negative 10, so that means I'm going to make that a negative. That one's going to be positive, and that's going to be my solution. Remembering, before I can actually say it's my final solution, whatever I pulled out, I need to make sure I put back in. So, looking at this, that is going to be the complete answer. All right, next one. 18x cubed plus 3x squared minus 36x. So, looking at this one, I want you to notice there is an x in every term. So I am going to be pulling an x out. And then we need to look if a number is coming out with it. Now, obviously, 2 can't because of that 3 in the middle. So next best, let's see if 3 works. And it ends up, it does work. So I can pull a 3 out and an x out. So when I do that, 18 divided by 3 gives me 6. X cubed, and I'm taking one of those away, leaves me with an x squared. 3 divided by 3 is just 1, so I'm going to leave it. X squared, pulling one of those x's out, so that's just an x. Negative 36, and I'm pulling a 3 out. Well, that's going to leave me with a negative 12. And then x, pulling an x out, won't have anything. So there is my factored form, all right? Pulling out that 3x. Now I do all the work that we've been doing previously. I'm going to break apart that 6. Well, that's going to leave me 1 and 6, 2 and 3. That 12 is going to break down into 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. So this time I have 2 separate structures to try. X and 6x, 2x, and 3x. So, now again, this can take a little while. This one has a lot of options, but we're just going to have to grind through and see what we can do. I'm going to start with the x and 6x formation. So, when I'm looking at this, I'm going to start plopping in numbers. Now again, something I notice, they're multiplying to be negative. So, what that means is when I plop in this 1 and this 12, I need to keep in mind one of those is going to be negative. So I make my connection 12 and 6. Well, that's either going to be positive 6 or negative 6, not the 1 that we're looking for there. So that is not going to be our solution. And when I reverse it, you could probably tell right off the bat, this is going to give us a really large number because remember that connection is 72 and 1. So that's either giving us positive 71 or negative 71. Still not quite what we are looking for. So I'm going to move on to the 2 and the 6. Now, remembering, if we're looking for an odd number in the middle, the 2 factors cannot both be even. So I'm actually going to scratch that one off right away. I'm not going to spend my time with it because I know it's not going to give me the answer. So instead, I'm going to focus on the 3 and the 4. So 4 and 18. And again, keeping in mind one of those is going to be negative. So we're talking about 14 or negative 14. Still not the one that we're shooting for. So let's flip this. Let's put the 4 here, the 3 there. So we get 3 and 24. And again, one of them has to be negative. So we're either talking about 21 or negative 21. Still not what we're looking for. So that means we've exhausted all of those options for that first structure. So I'm going to move on to my second structure, 2x and 3x. Let's see if we can make anything work there. So 1 and 12. So we're getting 3 and 24. Again, keeping in mind, we know one of those is going to be negative. So we're talking about 21 or negative 21. Well, not what we're shooting for. And if we were to reverse that, put the 12 here and the 1 there, we're still going to get large numbers. With one of those being negative, we're going to be talking about 34 or negative 34. So again, still not it. We have to keep searching. So 3 and 4. So here we're getting 8 and 9. All right, this is looking more promising because we know one of these needs to be negative, and that needs to be adding up to 1. So notice if I make this one negative, 9 and negative 8 gives us the positive 1 that we're looking for. So that's telling me that this is going to be a negative 4, a positive 3, and that finally is going to be our solution. Now remember, before I label this my solution, I need to put back the stuff that I pulled out. And then finally this, I can consider my answer. And again, just like the other videos, there's a lot of material in each of these. So I'm going to save that last one to do in class together. So please make sure that you've written out the rest of all these notes. We're going to wrap this up in class together. So thank you for joining me. Make sure you finish all your notes, and I will see you in class.